Good morning, good day, or good evening, depending on when you are seeing this video. Hello, my name is Shigeru Tanaka. I am the former global coordinator for REPES, the Intercontinental Network for the Promotion of Social Solidarity Economy, and also executive director at Pacific Asia Resource Center, a people's think tank based in Tokyo. And today I'm here with Yvonne Poirier, who has been with REPES since its inception or even before that. And the reason we are recording this session is because Yvonne has recently written a paper on the comparing and contrasting of some terminologies that are seemingly or perceived to be adjacent to SSE, Social Solidarity Economy. And I'm saying seemingly adjacent or overlapping sometimes because, yes, indeed, some of these terms have some elements that are either close to what we call social solidarity economy or sometimes even overlapping. But there are also some terms where we at REPES see a clear gap between their ideas, what they represent, and what we believe social solidarity economy represents. So today, I'm hoping Yvonne can maybe share a little bit of history of how the network that gathered together in the 90s have converged to the term social solidarity economy, what we value in that terminology, and how we differ from some of these may be perceived to be similar, but what we see as distinctly different terminologies. So Yvonne, it's all yours.
Yes, first of all, before we go into the presentation, I'll just explain who I am. I'm living in Canada, in Quebec City, which is a French province in Canada, and I was born in another province in a French minority, and everything when I was young was cooperatives and solidarity community. So this has been my life. It's continued in different manners. And after teaching and being involved in unions, I got deeply involved in international work to have an economy, have a world which is good for all and not only for the rich and the powerful. So there have been underprivileged people all over the world, and it was there, it's still there, and there's a long struggle to change that. So I was living in a richer society. I have a pension, so I can live on a public pension as a teacher. And I can be full-time as a people on a pension to work for change the world, to improve the world. So this is my life the last 20 years or so. And even before this, I was, well, in unions, we were talking about this also. So this is a continuation. I've been members of cooperative here in Quebec City, which is built by unions since 1971, credit union. So this has been my life. And but the international aspect really has been important in the last 20 years. So that's my brief introduction of who I am, and you can find more on the internet if you want to know more. And we'll start the presentation now. Decoding differences. This came about in meetings in last year or so, and all of a sudden people started talking about as Shigeru explained, the differences and similarities. But first, before going to those differences, I want to explain where SSE comes from. This is considered a new response to inequality and exclusion. There have been other examples before, like cooperatives or socialism or whatever, but that change that hasn't given the results we were expecting. What has changed in the last 50 years or so has been the globalization of the economy. 100 years ago, there were already different problems in the world, but what is different now in the last 5 or 6 decades is the whole global economy. Manufacturing is in one continent, banking in another continent, or whatever. I mean, this has really changed the world, and this was different. So people were, and this resulted in poverty and inequality like ever before. Like, for example, Latin America, inequality index really increased an awful lot during those years, and many other countries. And even today, the rich are richer than ever, and the poor are poorer than ever. So this brought people, instead of going to building, some people went into the politics and so forth, but the grassroots people say, we want to resist these effects of huge unemployment, huge inequality, but we will build alternatives. And this led to a first international meeting in 1997, where people from different continents, at that time, Asia was not yet involved, they soon came involved. Some history of this, first of all. Social economy is an expression that originates from France, and this is over 150 years old. Mostly in France and the French-speaking countries, like in Belgium, French-speaking part of Belgium. Solidarity economy is more recent. It appeared in the mid-80s. From what literature has said, there are two people that first used the expression, was Jean-Louis Laville in France and Rosetto in Chile. And in France, there was already social and solidarity economy. The expression social and solidarity economy was developed in France in 1989, 1990, because there were two movements. There was a social economy, which was the credit unions, mutuals, and so forth, but there are also new movements. RIPES itself was formally created December 2002, and the expression social solidarity economy was adopted at that occasion. How did we come about the international recognition of SSE? After that first international meeting in 1997 in Lima, in Peru, where people from Europe, North America, Africa were there, this got the ball rolling. And they decided it was important to continue to meet. So they met again in 2001 here in Quebec City, where I live. And then in Dakar in Senegal, Luxembourg 2009, and Manila in 2013. So as you can see, this covered the 5 continents. There's also Oceania, but it's much smaller, and there were no international meetings there. So this really was it's been a movement. It's not only organizing meetings. So this really, and while doing this helped to create in each continent a strong base for SSE. So the networks were built in Africa in 2004 or 5 when we met. Luxembourg was and formalized network in Europe and so forth. In Asia, it started a few years before. And since the beginning, the organization RIPES, we mentioned at the beginning, is a promotion of social solidarity economy. From the beginning, people got together to promote social solidarity economy at a global level, because locally or in each continent, it's not enough. You have to work at the global level. So this started well with the International Labor Organization, based in Geneva, which is all over the world. A meeting in South Africa. At that time, RIPES was participating in the event. There was Nancy Nimpton from Montreal, who was then with the Social Economic Network in Quebec. And there were a colleague from Senegal, from Mali in Africa. So, and this led to the creation later in 2013 of the United Nations Task Force on Social Solidarity Economy. I need to mention the importance of this, very important what happened in the future since then. At that time, a dozen or more UN agencies based in Geneva who have been working in international development, like there's a International Labour Organization, FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, UNRWA, which is a research organization, and United Nations Development Program and so forth. They've realized that we need new approaches to the development in the world, and especially with the economic crisis of 2008, 2009, that's originated in the US, unemployment rose, and we just couldn't continue to solve the problems and poverty in the world, for example, unless we did something different. This has led to the creation of the United Nations Task Force. I've been privileged to be able to attend all the meetings since then, online and sometimes in person. Another important thing we did was at Rio Plus 20 in June 2012, we decided in REPAS that SSE would be important for the future Sustainable Development Goals. So this has been the track that was decided then, and after that it really went strongly. This led to this international networking with UN agencies, with ILO, International Labour Organization, and networks like REPAS and others. This created momentum to be able to have the International Labour Conference, which is held each year. This is all the member countries of the International Labour Organization meet and they debate on different subjects. So in June 2022, the theme for discussion was social and solidarity economy. And we were involved then as an observer organization to be able to attend the evening meetings. I remember 10 days in a row having meetings online from where I live. So this really came about, and we'll see later, they adopted a decent work and solidarity economy resolution. So this is great. And the UN resolution, which was adopted in April 18, 2023, called promoting a social and solidarity economy for sustainable development. I have to explain here that this came about in part because the UN was recognizing more and more that they were falling behind in achieving the SDGs for 2030. So a new approach was needed. The national definition of SSE adopted in the International Labour Organization, but also is this definition used in the UN resolution, is important. And people need to read and understand well what this means. For example, as you see highlighted here, SSE enterprises entities to serve the collective and or general interests, which are based on the principles of voluntary cooperation and mutual aid, democratic or participatory governance, autonomy and independence, and the primacy of people and social purpose of the capital. This is the key word, primacy of people and social purpose of capital, which is not the case in the global system we're living in. So there's recognition that needs to be something different, that needs to be strengthened in the world. So this is, even if this definition is a compromise, it defines quite well, and it's very close to the way REPAS sees what SSE is. And now, since we want to explore the differences between SSE and other aspects, now we'll go to the other aspects. There are other alternatives that have been there for a long time, but especially what is interesting to mention is that social entrepreneurship is presented by some people as a fundamental alternative to solve the problems. Some even say that social entrepreneurship is SSE. But first, we need to know where they come from, these people. They started in the US with Ashoka in 1980s. Skoll Foundation was created by another US organization based in California. Skoll was a private business who the founder made a lot of money, so he created a foundation to support social entrepreneurship. And then more recently, the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. Important to mention here, the Schwab Foundation was created by Hilda and Klaus Schwab, one of the founders of the World Economic Forum. So this is the think tank, let's say, of the global corporate sector. So interesting to see that they also went into the support of social entrepreneurship. Catalyst 2030 is an international network which was created in 2019 by the Schwab Foundation and the World Economic Forum, their partners, and they also created in 2020 the Global Alliance for Social Entrepreneurship, or also with World Economic Forum. So all these who, like Ashoka and Skoll, were working independently. They were giving awards every year to the social entrepreneurs, individuals who created businesses, social businesses. But now they're all together within the World Economic Forum. And this was quite intriguing in some way, but it is a fact, and it's hard to say why they did this, but they did. So, and many people in governments, because of corporations and everything else, work on a forum, which is well known globally. This became an important strategy for the World Economic Forum. There are also other alternatives that have been created in the last 30 or 40 years. For example, corporate social responsibility. This is fairly well known. This is corporations do this in good part. This is explained in a longer paper that you'll be able to read after this event, after this recording. This is voluntary by business, and often it's more like giving a good image of the corporation. This is a promotional corporation that would be good. Inclusive business, this came about from G20. There's a promotion of the idea that big corporations needed to work with small businesses in the region where they are involved in to support job creation and so forth. Social business was invented by, it's a concept invented by Mohammed Yunus, who won the Nobel Prize for microcredit about in 2008 or so. And there's also recently the private finance in the world is organizing to impact investing. So they're putting important funds ready to invest in mostly in the global south, not only, but mostly, but that it is investing. So there needs to be return on the investment, but they say that they do reach out to have more social impact. It's not, it's possible there is positive impacts, but again, the risk is here is that the investors who have the money, they more or less decide where to invest and who to invest in what sector. This brought me and others to see what are these alternatives about. There are common features. They all talk of problems people are facing, such as poverty and exclusion, lack of jobs, decent income, and everything else. They realize that there are problems in the world, and they realize that there's, in some way, an effect of the system that they're in, now they're sending jobs to different continents and so forth. However, even if they do explain the problems, they don't explain the root causes of the problems people are living. What causes poverty? Is it because people are lazy or whatever else? This is not the case. It's clearly the systemic. When corporations move out of a country, they close the mines or whatever else, and people living there have no other way of income. So, I mean, and we can say, we could talk about textile workers in Bangladesh or whatever. I mean, people, even working people are poor. So this is linked to the corporations always go to where the prices for the wages are lower, the social protection is weaker, unions are weaker, whatever. So this is so the corporation needs to reduce the costs. So they will go wherever they want. They can't find a place to produce. However, instead of tackling those issues, they say that the social entrepreneurship is core to solve the problems. In other words, it's not looking at the root causes, but working to support people who are affected by the system we're living in. So in other words, in some way, oddly, it's like if they were saying that if there is poverty and social problems and inequality, it's that because there's not enough social entrepreneurship. Clearly, the lack of social entrepreneurship is not the cause of the root problems the world is living in, for sure. So this is like a let's put it this way. I'll be there's a word here which might shock some people, but it's like putting a plaster on a wound. I mean, it helps. It's important to do that to help people who are in poverty or excluded or young people unemployed and so forth. However, at the same time, we also need to look at the root causes and prevent for the future that things continue in the same way. So this is what I explain here. What does this mean for SSE for us? Even if not SSE, in light of the definition of the ILO and UN, which we saw previously, all these approaches do create businesses that do work in the communities, or at least most of them, in some way, like social and medium enterprise, small and medium enterprises that also create jobs in the communities. There is a increase of poverty and problems in the communities. This created, we could say, business opportunities for people to create businesses. At the local and community country level, depending on circumstances, SSE entities can collaborate with such initiatives, as we can collaborate with SMEs in our communities. Local development can be supported by all these people working together. And many young people are attracted to these approaches, say they are not attracted to the values of the corporate sector. They want to do it differently. If you question young people in universities, business schools, whatever, they are more conscious of problems, and so they want to do things differently. This brings me to a final thoughts about this. We need to distinguish the leadership of the social entrepreneur and related initiatives that are now under the fold of the World Economic Forum. There are thousands of social entrepreneurs at the grassroots level that are committed to create locally more socially minded businesses. So this is clear. We think, and I'm quite sure, that there are many, maybe a majority of people in social entrepreneurship are open, are willing to work to solve the problems, fundamental problems in society. Better taxation for the rich, wealth tax that's supported by many people. So we need to have these people, and this is those small businesses in the countries are not a problem by itself. Will also work with us for more fundamental changes on our societies, to build together an economy based on needs expressed in 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, such as food, housing, medical care, social services. We have to really understand that this means that the countries of the world in 1948 sees us that housing, food, medical care, social services are human rights. Society needs to provide an organized society, organized economy, so that people can have all these things that are essential to life. However, the system we're living in has not accomplished that. So we need to have fundamental change. This is why it's important to come back to the core value of SSE, which is like the resolution does, the primacy of people and social purpose of capital. And we also, more recently now, we could add and the planet over capital. So primacy of people and social purpose over people and the planet is important. So this is the fundamental mission that we pass and more global SSE movement has. There's a long way to go, but we don't have any choice if we want to improve the world we're living in. So with this document, with this interview, we'll receive links to the papers we produce. So this will be, and we can have maybe webinars or other meetings. This is a very, very, very short presentation here. It's important to read and look at the more fundamental documents that we have. Well, thank you very much for listening, and the future is for us to build. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Very concise presentation. I just had some questions, maybe to just maybe dig deeper into some of the points. Could you tell me a little bit more about the inception of REPES? So we had that Lima meeting in 1997. At that meeting, was the term social solidarity economy already the representative ideology at that meeting? I mean, was it called the meeting, International Meeting on Social Solidarity Economy, or was it something else at that moment? And did we evolve into the ideology of social solidarity economy?
At that meeting, the expression was solidarity economy. However, if you have a look at that document in the introduction, it says that we from social movements, unions, women's organizations, church organizations, and social economy organizations, meaning cooperatives and others, we want a solidarity economy. In other words, social economy then said that those that were at that meeting at least, said they wanted to promote the solidarity economy. In other words, the key word, this is solidarity. And I do want to mention, this is not explained in the paper, but it is explained in another paper that you will be able to read, is that gradually, because of things evolved, it became SSE, not necessarily because we wanted to, but things that happened in that way. So what we've done, instead of pushing to just have solidarity economy, the content, the values and the mission of SSE are the values that were at the 1997 meeting. So because of language and cultures in the world, social economy is not known in Asia or even in the US. Even in Latin America, this originated from France, as I said, and French-speaking Africa. So over time, gradually got together in MIPAS from different continents and different languages. It's important to mention this was for us, it was also a work in progress to be able to build this. And once the UN agencies decided in 2013, you call it SSE, well, we accepted that term and we said we'll do our best that the SSE vision that UN Task Force has is similar to the original values. And generally speaking, I think this is a case. In MIPAS, it was clarified in 2011 what our fundamental values and mission is as an alternative to the global economy we're living in, a more people-centered economy. So there's been a lot of work, and this is the origins of all this. I explained in another paper that was I wrote in 2014 with help of friends. Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to kind of also think about how, especially in some of the Asian contexts, and maybe it's the same in some of the other continents, that there are some countries, due to their cultural backgrounds, have kind of a hesitancy to use the term solidarity. Because in some cultures it kind of is easily associated with communisms or other types of modes of economy that are distinguished from the capitalist mode of economy. And due to that cultural hesitancy, some networks prefer to use the word social economy as opposed to solidarity economy, while in practice, sometimes they cover the elements of what we would call social solidarity economy. And how have you or REPES settled with this type of cultural discrepancies amongst our member organizations?
This led us, as I mentioned, in different past exchanges and meetings, like in Manila in 2013, and so forth, or the U.S., United States, for example. It's only social economy. Social economy is not an expression which is used, except maybe academia. There are other problems. For example, Eastern Europe, because it was under the Soviet Union, when we talk about social economy or solid economy, it relates to that old thing, and it's hard to use expressions. But when you use, like in India, community development or community economy, whatever, there are many different ways of saying it. But with the definition adopted by UN, all the countries in the world adopted that definition. It was adopted by consensus. Now we have something which is that clarifies, and it's not only the debate on the title, it's the content which is important. So you can call it whether you want in your language. I don't know, in China, I don't know exactly what they would say, or even in Japan or other countries, because the three concepts I'm mentioning here, social economy, social economy, we have to admit that, originate from the more developed countries like Europe and North America. In other parts of the world, it developed differently. For example, our friends in ASEFA in south of India, they've been calling it community development since 2000, created in 1968. When you look at what they say they want as economy, it is solid economy or SSE. But you don't need to change what you're doing, the names of things you're doing. But globally, there needs to be, and this is the network building, the alternative building, building the alternatives, to have a common vision, values, and mission. Even if the UN resolution definition is a compromise, it is quite sufficient. And when you go to government, said your delegation to the ILO in Geneva 2022, and your permanent mission in New York adopted this document with that definition, we have something to work on. I think that could be help. Now we need to work with, for example, often it's just that people just don't know that it exists. A former friend who was from South Africa was presiding UN task force saying, SSE is under the radar. Nobody knows about it. But we are not in we are not the World Economic Forum. I mean, we are not business stocking newspapers or whatever. We are not in the stock exchange or corporations and so forth. We are very, very little. However, there is progress. Just for example, last week, the mayor of Montreal said we have about 6% of housing, which is not on the market, social housing, cooperatives, and so forth. We need to have 20% of housing, which is not in the market. And this could be done by community land trusts. So in other words, we SSE approach has the capacity to tackle all the social problems. But it needs solidarity in the community. It cannot be solved by one individual or few individuals. It cannot be solved by a politician. It can be not solved by a mayor. We need to work together. This is our difference. The system we're living in is led by corporations or like the GAFA and all those. I mean, they have hundreds of billions of assets. They cannot solve those problems. On the contrary, they want to have more money. They want to. So, and one people have time to read this one day is the French economist called Piketty wrote a book on capital in the 21st century. This explains wealth, how accumulation of wealth is the way the system works. And if there's no accumulation, it has a problem. So it's like a driving force. It's like a For example, tigers are not vegetarian. The global economy cannot solve the social problems because it's not their goal. Their goal is to make more money, to improve the wealth of the 1%. So we're living in a society which is more educated than ever. Of course, there's a lot of media, there's a lot of false news or whatever, but over time, people will have and this, I'm quite sure of this, a critical vision of all this. People are proposing solutions, and after maybe take 5, 10, 15 years, you realize that they're not real solutions. They're not solving the problems. It takes education, it takes effort. SSE rarely taught in universities. It's just starting. So this is I mean, we need to have a long-time version. It's not a panacea. It's not a quick solution. But the world doesn't have any choice. And because of the world we're living in, inequality, this is what brings a lot of people to have social conflicts, even armed conflicts. Often the poor and the rich in the country or different regions, and instead of blaming the system we're living in, you blame the other community, the other ethnic group, whatever. The poverty and exclusion really is the breeding ground for all these problems we're living in. So this is also a way of reaching out to solve the problems we're living in. It's a different mindset.
Thank you. Just a little bit more, since we have a little bit more time. One question I had was, have a lot of the discussion been about corporations, capitalist modes of development, and how that creates social woes? Or has there also been discussions, including the element of, for example, North-South relationships? The reason I'm asking is because, for example, countries like Sri Lanka, we have allies in Sri Lanka in the Asian network, and I feel that it is extremely unfair in the sense that Sri Lanka's debt towards developed country has developed so much that 70% of the country's annual revenue, the government revenue, has to go to paying off the debts. And in that situation, these governments cannot offer the support that they should be able to offer to the communities, to their own people. And at the same time, we have developed countries who have extraordinary power in the UN saying, okay, these concepts are important, and they're supporting like social cooperatives in Italy, and they have these mechanisms. And to go to countries like Sri Lanka and say, oh, that's because you don't have enough entrepreneurship or you don't have leadership, to say, frame them into those situations, to me seems quite unfair for the people of Sri Lanka, and is wondering if that notion of how you say you don't want to blame it on the people have also had discussions, including elements of these North-South inequalities or relationships, as opposed to not only these corporate and capitalist development.
Of course, very important questions. For REPASS, to start with, we did something differently than the other organizations. We called it intercontinental network and not international network. So our network on its governance itself is based on continents. So half our board is people from what we call the South continents, and half are North. So in other words, we created an equal level of governance. So it's not a big organization in the North who dictate the way we work, first of all. Second thing you mentioned is extremely important, and we do have exchanges, and we often exchange with what is called there's an international network on financing for development. There are hundreds of NGOs, and not NGOs, for example, Eurodad in Europe, which wants to get rid of the debt in Africa, Latin Dad, which has the same thing. So that then we collaborate with these movements. We not been able to involve as much as we could, but clearly, what you're saying, the inequality and the way the debt of the third world is often, not only often, is this is forced on them often, or even in some cases by corrupt governments, because some countries spend more on arms than on social protection, whatever. It's a global market. So what happens in the north, the corporations have, for example, military producers, the armament sector, they have tanks or planes to sell. They go to the country, yes, we can sell that. You could buy that, but it would be through debt. So, I mean, there are huge problems, and this debt in the global south, and many people will say all that bad debt in the global south should be abolished. However, even if we abolish the debt, let's say tomorrow we say zero, if we don't change the way of working, they might be as much indebted in 10 years from now. There needs to be a different way of doing this. But the corporations and countries in the north will not abide that, will not accept that really. Because the corporations in the north, what we call in some way neo-colonialism, like the French corporations in Africa, or British corporations in other places of the world, or now Chinese corporations, they go into countries and they have funding and they negotiate with governments to be able to get natural resources and so forth. I mean, another example I can give here, an Oxfam report about 4 years ago mentioning that there's more profits that corporations get from Africa than international aid that provided countries to Africa. So, I mean, it's not, I mean, SSE, we can help build local economies, but as you imply, you need to change the whole structure. This is how we're hoping we contribute a little bit to the next Financial for Development conference we have 2025. There was a conference in Addis Ababa in 2015 that was supposed to organize financing for the SDGs. That didn't happen. The corporations are not interested in, they're not interested in see how they can solve poverty. There's no money to be made there. It's as simple as that. So there's, but this will be extremely tough because the rich countries, including the US, Europe, have the voting rights at the World Bank and other places. However, we want to start someplace. This is why in your resolution, we're able to get one paragraph on working with the multilateral development banks, Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, and the American, Latin American Bank, to have credit, to have a financing for SSE. They have financing for the corporations. But there's a problem. I was in a meeting in 2014 in Washington where they were, and they're saying we can finance a project, let's say in Ghana or whatever, which so the cost of the project is $100 million. But we can't finance a small SSE organization or even SME, which needs $10,000. So there needs to be a way, like we have in other countries in the north, like in Canada, in Quebec province where I live, there needs to be a social economy, solar economy funding system. We have credit union and so forth, but we need also funds to invest. And there are some in here. We have good examples. And that's another paper we can share. I wrote with a friend in Geneva about the challenges of financing for development and SSE. So we have the knowledge, but it'd be extremely hard to convince. And to do this, it's not only SSE. We need to outreach to other social movements, feminist movements, people working in the debt and third world. We are not there yet. We haven't not yet globalized social economy, no, NGOs, nonprofit NGOs. Everybody works by themselves. Like Oxfam does its own thing, others do their own thing. We cannot change the world unless we get all together. This will be tough, take time, but I mean, I think that well-minded people, those organizations, don't really understand all the aspects of this, because you can't change the system if you have a full-scale system to organize things like research. And there's an awful lot out there which is not really, for example, private-public partnerships in the Global South. All the analysis has been doing is that countries get indebted by this. I mean, this is very well documented, but it's still promoted by governments. So there's also, partly also in some way, ideology is here also. When we talk about these alternatives, the worst, no, let's put it this way. One of the ultimate arguments we get when we push all these debates is to say, well, we don't have any choice. We have to live with the system. We don't want to be North Korea or China, whatever. I mean, there's an ultimate argument, which is strictly ideology, because nobody wants that either. I mean, we want a democratic economy, because our difference, which we prize values, and it's the case with most people in SSE, that we, at this stage in history, we have the capacity for the people to manage the economy. Probably the first time in history. We had kings and emperors and so forth. We had the feudal system. We have the capital system, which is controlled by a few people. Finally, let's say we could have a list of the 1,000 most important people in the world which are in the system, and they control the system we're living in. People in government, they even can force governments to do things. They are forcing the World Trade Organization to. Anyway, I could go on and on and on, but we have the capacity to do things differently. We have people who went to universities. We have people in school, knowledge, but the ideology in the media or universities is still not in our direction. So this is we have to look at all the spectrum of what needs to be done. But there are people, which is encouraging. I'm positive myself, always positive, because they're different. I mean, when you work with people who want to help society and work to help the communities, you are encouraged. And we have them all over the world. In all countries of the world, we have people who have the same values and mission and vision. So, and this is strengthening this movement. It will take time. I mean, it might take decades, whatever. But at the same time, there is urgency because people are dying because of poverty, whatever. And climate change is going to be awful if we don't change, because we're almost over the 1.5% of global warming. There's no fundamental change. It'll be 3.5 or 4%. So the people who are affected now by our global system will be even affected much worse. There will be flooding, there'll be catastrophes and tornadoes and so forth. I mean, this is not a natural causes. This exists naturally, typhoons, whatever, but they're increased by human activity. So, I mean, this is why I think we need to continue to work with the youth in schools. Young people and we need to provide solutions, because we have young people here are what people, phenomenon, I think, I don't know if it's used in English, called eco-anxious. They are discouraged because it's too much. There's no way we'll be able to change that. We need to provide that help to provide that hope. There are other ways of doing the economy. And this is our mission and our values, and this is what we promote every day.
We have a lot to do ahead of us, right?
Yes.
Yes. So to kind of thinking about wrapping up here, So on the one hand, we have these actual on the ground problems of poverty, for example, or climate change. And we have some in cases it might be social entrepreneurs who work on these issues, but we can work on these issues, for example, create a fair trade cooperative and support the livelihoods of women all we want. But unless we go to the root causes of why these people are in the situation of poverty or social exclusion or inequality, going to the root causes of these, unless we do that, then we are only putting bandages on the wound, so to say, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Um, and so it's not to deny those projects and it's not to deny those people involved in the projects, but what we value is that we also look at the structural causes of those problems, whether it be corporate greed or capitalist development or global north-south relationships. And so in that sense, we are looking at both of these situations, right? So we look at the local and what is actually going on, because unless we have these alternative means of actually running our day-to-day economies, we cannot just go to the system and say, change it, and then have nothing to run the economy. So I see it as kind of like two wheels of a bicycle where both have to be running to really get balance, in the hopes that one day we are able to run on a unicycle with the alternative economies. Am I understanding this situation correctly?
Yes. I would just add that we also have to work at all levels.
Yes.
Because I didn't mention this much so far, but this is our we are grassroots organizations. And the grassroots in different countries get together in networks and then network globally. So we just can't, and this is a problem in some international NGOs, they just work globally to try to change the system. This is impossible because whether we like it or not, there needs to be in each country vision to change things. So you need to work with politicians, university people. You need to create this vision at the country level. It can't be top down. So, and as you say, you have to get people to realize this. You just can't change the system in one single country. We know that. But with this international network we have, whether we like internet or social media, there are possibilities of getting people to meet and similar-minded people to work together to improve things. And I agree, it's another old expression. It's like you use the expression two wheels on a bicycle. We could use two prongs on a fork. I mean, you just try to pick up something with only one prong, you won't get very far. So you need to get together. So this is also, it's impossible just to do it locally also. So we need to do it globally. And over the next years, we need to not only do our work, we need to outreach each other to reach out and work and maybe organize meetings or whatever. I would call it also, I haven't used the word so far, but we are in the ecosystem. We have people in universities, research, we have people in local communities, we have people working globally in continents and so forth. And we can improve our strength and our movement. But there are different progress going on. For example, the African Union will be adopting in a few weeks SSE strategy for 2023 to 2033. So the African Union recognizes SSE also, not only UN and so forth. So since we have that formal recognition, we can move much further. For example, the International Labour Organization is having its annual conference 2 weeks from now in Geneva. The debate this year will be the care economy. There's also a lot, and we need to go to spaces where we need to demonstrate that our approach can be part of the solution to solve the problems that people are living. Like the social protection, we just joined also REPAS. There's a international labor organization set up a global alliance for social justice. This is part of the work. So we need to outreach, and I think there's fundamental things going on. Whether we like it or not, people do understand that the fact that the 1% of the population, or the 5 biggest, richest persons in the US, which are all men, the increase in wealth in the last 5 years has been over $1 trillion US, which is more than people in Africa live on up to a certain point. I mean, the wealth is there, or the capacity to change things is there, but it's all captured. We like living in a giant siphon, which is gathering all the money all over the world to one stock markets and everything else. But that can change, because once you build your own economy locally and keep the surpluses and you make, you can reinvest in community, and don't give, and don't make sure the funds don't go to the those that own the economy. I mean, there will be compromises. It's difficult, but there's no reason why we can't manage any business. A cooperative could own, let's say, aerospace company building planes. I mean, it's just, instead of stockholders, you could have all the finance. We have a lot of finance. This was the case after the Second World War, by the way, in Europe. Railroad and even Renault manufacturing cars was government companies. That changed because of pressure from the corporate sector. So, I mean, there's no scientific reason why it couldn't be done. It's a political ideology and so forth. So this is why I think we can be positive. I'll work.
Right. Thank you, Yvonne, for your time, and I'm really looking forward to see the paper in full, and I'm looking forward to hear reactions from many of our allies. The paper should be accessible through the REPES website, if my understanding is correct.
It is available online now.
Okay, all right. So let's keep this dialogue going on, and we will work hard because we have a lot of things ahead of us. But always important to note that we're not alone in this.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Bye.